Hello and welcome to the Enhanced Decision Making webinar series. This is the first webinar of the series and it has been made possible in part through funding under the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture's ADOPT program. Today our webinar topic is identifying the golden traits and tracking livestock production records. My name is Obio Haduruna. I am the Weyburn Regional Livestock Specialist with the Ministry of Agriculture and I will be chairing the webinar today. Our presenter for this webinar is Dr. John Crowley. John is currently the Director of Scientific and Industry Advancement with the Canadian Beef Breeds Council and is also a Research Associate with the Livestock Gentech at the University of Alberta. Originally from Ireland, John grew up on a mixed dairy and beef operation. He received his PhD in animal breeding and genetics from the University College Dublin. After working with the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation as a geneticist, he joined Livestock Gentech in 2011. With both CBBC and Gentech, he is responsible for genetic improvement and evaluation. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping notes. This presentation is scheduled to take about 3/4 of an hour, leaving time for questions or comments. If you have questions during the presentation, you may type them in the question box in the bottom right-hand side of the control panel, and we can answer them at the end of the presentation. The question box can also be used to communicate any difficulties you may have with sound or presenter speed. During the presentation, you will be muted, so there is no feedback that will interfere with audio. Please ensure the volume on your speakers is turned up. If you are having difficulty with your speakers, there is also a telephone option which requires you to dial in to listen through a phone while viewing the slides on your computer screen. And if you're viewing the webinar today from a computer with dial-up, you may experience some delay in audio or the slides. If we run into any delay with the webinar, please stay online and our host will reconnect. After you exit the webinar today, a brief evaluation will appear. Please take time to fill it out. It will help us plan future events. A link to the recorded webinar will also be sent out to all registered participants and will be posted on our website following the live presentation. At this time, we will start the presentation and I'll hand things over to Dr. Crowley. Take it over, John.
Thanks, Obi. Hello, everyone. So today I'm going to talk a bit about trait recording. Obi, you can give me feedback and along the way to make sure everybody can hear me okay. So the title of today's webinar is Identifying the Golden Traits and Tracking Livestock Production Records. So I'm a geneticist by trade, and that's what I do with the U of A and with the Canadian Beef Breeds Council. So, you know, when we do genetic evaluation, it's very important and to record these traits, or that's kind of some of the things I'm going to speak to today. So my two affiliations are with the Canadian Beef Breeds Council and with Livestock Gentech at the University of Alberta. So just briefly, CBBC, they were set up, their vision or their objective is to provide a unified voice in support of the purebred genetics provided within the Canadian beef breeding industry or the beef cattle industry, and to ensure the continuity, growth and prosperity of the purebred cattle sector. So essentially their three focuses are to support and promote breed improvement and to represent the Canadian beef breeds both within Canada and internationally. So kind of the first of those three keywords there, support, that's kind of where I come in. I kind of help all the breeds and their customers and the commercial guys with breed improvement questions and breed improvement tasks. So I'm actually based at the University of Alberta. Today I'm speaking to you from Calgary. I happen to be down at the CCA offices. But I'm based at the U of A in Edmonton, and there we have a little centre called Livestock Gentech, which is an Alberta Innovates Biosolutions. That's who funds us. And essentially that was set up to capitalise on both research from around the world and research done here in Canada to deliver the results of that research in breeding and genetics and management and breed improvement, to deliver those results and tools to the commercial industry, both seed stock and commercial. And essentially we try to work with all links of the beef value chain, but all the way from the seed stock all the way to the packer. With background, there's cow-calf, feedlot in the middle of that. So when we talk about collecting traits and collecting phenotypes and recording data, we really want to record data from all those links along the way, from when an animal is created to when it expires, whether it's a terminal or maternal animal. So all of this data recording research and all the breed improvement stuff, it's done a lot here in Canada, but we have a lot of international partners. Our main partners will be in the US, New Zealand, Australia, UK, and Ireland, where I'm from. You can see there are a lot of different partners. A lot of the breed societies, a lot of the funding agencies, government agencies, different firms across the waters. It's all a big collaborative effort. We learn from them, they learn from us. We're not shy about data sharing. In the modern age of computers and algorithms, it's very important to share as much data without giving away, I suppose, responsibility for that data. So it's important to share data as much as possible, because you can't do everything yourself. So we do promote a collaborative effort, and that's what our centre focuses on. So just before I keep going on the topic of data recording, I'll always refer data recording to feeding into genetics and genetic improvement, as well as data recording for the actual management and the segregation of animals. So just to clear up a few words that you'll hear me refer to as I go ahead, and some definitions. So when we talk about genetics, that's the definition of that is the study of inheritance, so how genes are passed on. So we use, in animal breeding then, we use what we know of genetics to improve our animals. We use what we know about how genes are passed along to improve our animals. And I suppose in today's animal breeding and even animal management environment, the word genomics starts to crop up more and more. And genomics is a branch of molecular biology concerned with the structure, function, evolution, and mapping of genomes. And a genome essentially is just the whole complement of genes within any organism. So I think before I put this talk together today, I asked Obi on what I should focus on. So I think he mentioned that EPDs and genomics will be kind of dealt with maybe in a future seminar or webinar. So I'll focus on data recording, but essentially it all leads into the improvement of our animals. So I always kind of start off with this: genetics creates potential, management delivers. And this is kind of why it's important to record traits and see what your animals are doing and see what's trending within your herds and across herds, because we want to improve the genetics of our animals. And you, as whether you're a seed stock or a commercial or a feedlot guy, you want to be able to choose the best genetics. So when you data record, you can see where the best genetics are coming from, whether the bulls you bought have been shining through. If you're a feedlot guy, where the best animals coming from, what cow-calf are they coming from, or what sire or breed they're coming from. So you want to see what they deliver, and genetics helps deliver all of that. So genetics creates potential, management delivers. I mean, you can't see me right now, but I'm 5'10". I don't have the genetics to be an Olympic sprinter, right? So no matter, I don't have the genetics to be an Olympic sprinter, but I'm sure if I train really, really hard and I get the right stuff and I put a lot of management into myself, I might have got close. I might have, got to national level or something. But I would have had to do a lot of management, a lot of nutrition to manage myself to get there, because I didn't have the optimum genetics. So, if you have the genetics, everything becomes easier down the road. So when we're talking about a production system and moving forward, and it's always good to set your goals. Why do you want a data record? Why do you want genetic improvement? You know, this all feeds into answering some of the questions about your production system. I just listed a few of them here. How do you choose your cows and your bulls? What are you choosing them for? Are you focused on terminal traits? Do you want to you know, choose for replacement heifers? And of course, those characteristics are very, very different. You know, more and more we're starting to hear about functional traits being very important, feet and legs, udder, etc. So it's good to record all the data on these. You can see when you start recording data, you can actually go back and analyze it and see what sires are working well, what dams are working well, what to cull, what to keep. So this all feeds back into the importance of data recording and what you should record. Well, I'll speak a bit more to what you should record later on. You know, and recording all these, essentially what you want to do, one of your main goals, and no matter how you get there, is increase your dollars, increase the bottom line without a lot of extra time and labor. Create efficiencies in your system, benefit the environment. That's becoming very important now also. You know, make agriculture sustainable. Coming under a lot of social pressure for farmers to move in that direction when they're making management and breeding decisions. Also, animal welfare. Things like, as I just mentioned, feet and legs. You know, just pushing and pushing and pushing for gain. You know, that can have an impact on functional traits of animals. So the welfare side of it is becoming more important. Even things like horned and polled. You know, that could become very important on a welfare issue for the public or for the consumers to be seeing farmers to you know, to poll their cattle using a soldering iron or caustic soda or whatever the other methods are. That's not, it's been practiced for ages, and we're used to it on a farm level, but once the public see that, they're not so keen on it. So, you know, there's things from an animal welfare that will come up that will need to be taken into consideration. And essentially, low maintenance cattle, and where we are positioned in Canada here, we definitely have the opportunity to be that world leader. So I've just got two little slides here to show what data recording, data management, and genetic selection can do. And this is a kind of a success story that came out of poultry. You've got carcasses there. So these are carcasses, chicken carcasses that were photographed on the same day. And you've got 1957 genetics on the top photographs and 2001 genetics on the bottom. And the way they were able to take it on the same day is because there was semen in storage for the 1957 genetics, so they were able to be mated and see what the genetics were like on the same day as the 2001. So you can see there's a huge difference in so there are different days of growth all the way from day 43 to day 85. And you can see there's a huge difference in the actual visual characteristics of those chickens. Huge increase in lean meat yield there in the 2001 genetics. And that was all done. That was all achieved through data recording and genetics and selection. And that's a huge success story of where you can get to if you manage your data correctly. Another one is pigs. In 1972, pigs would need 220 pounds, or to get to 220 pounds, they would have had to consume 836 pounds of feed. In 2007, you can have a bigger pig, a 275 pound pig, with less feed, with 715 pounds. So that's an increase of nearly 33% in their feed conversion ratio. And again, that's done by selecting on average data gain and feed conversion ratio, and managing data and analysing it and putting it all together into a constructive way on where you can move management forward. And that's another huge success story. And of course there's been success stories in cattle as well. Dairy have done very well, beef have done very well in certain places, but the data recording in beef is a lot more difficult just due to the environment, right? So pigs, poultry, and even dairy, you've got close contact with those animals nearly 24/7. Beef is a little different, where you might see the animals a lot less, so that nearly makes it even more important to capture those traits on beef animals whenever you do see them. So as I said, Obi will be talking a little more about EPDs and genomics in a further webinar. But I said I'd put up this little equation here of where EPDs come from. So the phenotype, I'll keep using this word phenotype. That's what I refer to as a trait. Like weaning weight is a phenotype, birth weight is a phenotype. Where we get EPDs from is marrying a phenotype with an animal's pedigree, and then we're able to see what its genetic merit is. And we take account of the this is genetic by environment equals phenotype. So when we're analysing the animal's phenotypes, we take out all the environmental factors like what they've been fed or where they grew up or how many contemporaries were in their group or the age of their dam or their breed, to actually get a genetic merit of the animal, and the genetic merit measure is an EPD. But the important thing here is getting all this information, you need to record the phenotype. So we put all those together. You know, I have a dairy picture there. Milk recording is very easy in dairy. You see the cows nearly twice a day, maybe more frequent some places, maybe less frequent other places, depending on the frequency of milking. You can get carcass data back from the packing plant. You can weigh your animals. You can record health information. And also, if you're using AI, the accurate keeping of AI records also feeds into your whole data repository. So when you record all these, and again, I'll talk as I go ahead. I'll talk about exactly some of the traits to be recording and how to record them. But this is just kind of an overview first. You know, when you do record, there's a lot of user tools, both softwares and software management providers and decision tool providers out there that will take care of your data and analyze it for you and give it back to you in a nice, easy to use form. You know, you might go in and collect all your weaning weights and birth weights, and in the end of the day you might have just a big Excel sheet full of figures, and it's very important to analyze that and look for trends and who's at the top of the tree and who's scraping the barrel. So it's very important to get a good picture of what can come out of all your data. So there's a lot of people that can help you with that. Us at the University of Alberta, we do a lot of that extension type of work. You know, there's a lot of people. I'll probably be. I'll try and remain unbiased, and I'll refrain from mentioning actual decision-making companies, or you know. But a lot of veterinary assistants will help you out with all your data, and they'll point you in the right direction. There's a lot of data management software out there, such as ViewTrax or CattleTrax or CattleMax. You know, there's numerous of them out there, and I won't list them all off for you either. But you know, you get little profiles back like this. Say this is just like one animal. Where does he rank on fertility or calving or beef? You know, should you keep him say if this is a bull that served your animals, should you keep him next year? Should you cull him? If he's top of the list, you probably keep him for a year or another year. If he's down at the bottom, well, you should see how many offspring he's actually sired, whether it's an actually good representation of what he can do. If he hasn't sired that much, you'd probably give him another chance because he's a new bull in a bigger party of bulls. But these are all ways and decisions that will come out of your decision making. So that's just the same slides again, but with two other little pieces of information in there. Well, it's the one piece of information. I have just two pictures to illustrate it. Just like this is DNA information. That's just a schematic of a double helix, and the information that comes out of a DNA sample is actually a whole bunch of letters: A's, C's, G's, and T's. And as geneticists, we're able to turn that around into usable information based on what we know about other cattle. So we kind of marry the traits that we collect from the abattoir, we collect from the bull test station, or we collect from farmers, whether it be health or weights or fertility information, and the phenotypes we collect from the AI companies. And then we're able to marry that with the DNA information, and we're able to create predictions out of that. So you'll see a little quote I have later on, especially when you keep hearing about genomics in this day and age, it's even more important to keep recording data. And this is kind of why I encourage your data collection to step it up and to you know, really have a structured data collection program. Niels Bohr, famous physicist, says prediction is very difficult, especially about the future. A bit of a tongue-in-cheek phrase, but he's kind of right when you think about it. So you need to do as much as you can to help you predict the future, and if you're one step ahead of the game in your production system, well, you're going to be able to capitalize that and probably get dollar figures back into your pocket a lot sooner than the other guy. And when you're moving forward, when you're trying to predict the future, as that quote just said, it's very difficult. The more accurate you can predict the future, the better you are. Not talking about looking into a glass ball, but you know, when we're talking about predicting the future in animal management, it's, you know, trying to figure out what your animals will do, trying to figure out how fast they will grow, how you should feed them, how you should partition them, how you should sell them, how you should market them. So that's all, you know, what you're trying to do, and that, you know, the accuracy of these predictions is very important. So on a bull, say when you're choosing a bull, you know, if he's just a bull by himself and he's got no progeny recorded on him, and he's just hanging out by himself, you know, all his information, all his EPDs and stuff will have an accuracy of about 25%, which, as I'll show you in the next slide, affords his predictions have a lot of wiggle room to change. They couldn't go up and down by a lot. Once you start recording information on a bull's progeny, all of a sudden his predictions or his measures of merit become very accurate. Even if you just record traits on 10 of his progeny, say that'll be his first breeding season and that's his first calf crop, and you analyze that data, his EPD accuracy will jump up to 65%. You know, you have a bull then that has 70 to 100 progeny, his accuracies are getting way up there to 90%, and all of a sudden his predictions on what he can do are very, very accurate. So it doesn't mean just because he's got a big accuracy he's good. You could be just getting more accurate to prove that he's bad. You know, so all bulls or cows or heifers or replacement heifers will have a varying will have a prediction, but they'll always have an accuracy that will dictate how much that prediction will vary. So they can always get better, they can always get worse. So I'll just allude back to EPDs for a second when I'm talking about how data recording fits in. The more data recording, the more accurate you're going to be able to make decisions on bulls or replacement heifers. You know, you have a, say, birth weight, for instance. If you have an EPD and the accuracy on that birth weight is 10 or 30%, well, that birth weight can move by 2.5 or about 2 pounds up or down. So you can get better or worse, and all of a sudden you think you could have a low birth weight bull when he actually could turn out to be average. Or you think you might have an average birth weight bull and he might turn out to be actually quite a heavy bull. So, you know, you're trying to limit your risks there, as that's what data recording will, where data recording will get you, is you're trying to limit your risks. So how do you improve accuracy? You know, accuracy is always very important. Any predictions, I would always take accuracy into account as another metric that you should view. So always look at the accuracy. Without DNA information, usually accuracy increased by collecting more phenotypes, improving the quality of those phenotypes. There's no, you know, if you're collecting birth weights, guesstimating those birth weights is not usually much better than not recording a birth weight. You're probably actually introducing a lot of error and biasing a lot of things if you start guessing birth weights. I remember I had a look at some birth weight data there from another database, and I just said, just out of curiosity, I had a look at the birth weights, and I wanted to see how many of the birth weights ended in a 0 or a 5. You know, recording a birth weight as 90 or 100 is very convenient. So actually, about 80% of the birth weights ended in a 0 or a 5. So it was kind of funny to see that. That would tell me that a lot of those were guesstimated. Probably better than nothing, but you should really strive for the actual thing. And again, better pedigree recording. I'll talk a bit about that in a second. The better pedigree recording doesn't have to be, I'm not solely alluding to the seed stock sector there. Even on a multi-sire pasture, parentage verification is very, very important. It comes at a little cost, but I think you'll see a huge return in the cost when you do start parentage recording. You can see what bull did what. If a bull didn't even work, you can segregate all your offspring by their performance based on what bull, and you can see what guy to get rid of, what guy you should keep, or what guy you should probably buy more of if you can get your hands on them, and go back to your pedigree guy again. So phenotypes, they're important. I always put this quote in from Mike Coffey at Scottish Rural College in Scotland. He has this very neat phrase: in the age of the genotype, phenotype is king. So genotype being DNA information, because we need to marry up those that DNA information with the phenotypes. Because we need to know what the DNA is doing and how it's expressing itself and resulting in an actual observation, whether it be wean weight or carcass merit or some of the female traits such as fertility or other quality. And you know, that's what kind of your decision makers will do, you know, whether they're a geneticist or a third party. You know, they'll look at your phenotypes and they'll give you reports back, and if there's genotypes, they'll crank that information into it as well and give you a report back, usually in a nice, easy to use format where you don't have a bunch of numbers just up and down in rows and columns. It's always good to get a picture back of it, because, you know, as they say, a picture does paint 1,000 words. Another plus of data recording is you can actually position yourself as that producer that data records a lot. So you can kind of position yourself as an information dense producer. You know, if you'll always have that information at hand for your customers, whether they should need it or not. And that's always kind of a little bit of a guarantee to your end customers. Again, I'm speaking fairly generically. I'm not speaking to seed stock or cow-calf or feedlot in particular. This can be to any of the links of the beef value chain. To be an information dense producer is a good face to show. It shows that you're passionate about what you do. It shows that you're diligent about what you do, and if there's ever a question asked by your customers, you'll probably have that information there. You can turn it around pretty quick and get it back to them. So what should you record? The first one there probably you know, this is more for a multi-sire pasture type of scenario where you've got 8 bulls out with how many ever 100 cows. I think parentage is very important there, and as I mentioned before, it does come with a little bit of a cost, but I bet you over if you factor that into your whole production system, and those costs will be negated very, very quickly by what you can use that information for and make better decisions. And you get your return on investment there very, very quickly. The other traits that you should be recording, I'll turn to economically relevant traits. And you know, you could think about them all day, but if you think of the lifespan of an animal and all the pieces of information you want to know about an animal, it's not common sense, but you can kind of elucidate them pretty easily. So the minute an animal is born, you want birth weight and you want its calving ease. So there are two bits of information that you want straight away. Calving ease will both feed into the direct calving ease of the calf and the maternal calving ease, how easy the mother gave birth. Now, if you don't record a calving ease, it's usually just assumed that it was an easy calving. So if you have, say, 200 cows calving and nothing's recorded, it's presumed that everything was an easy calving. But if you start recording if you have a scale of 1 to 4, 1 would be easy, 2 would be a pull, 3 would be a hard pull, 4 is veterinary assistance. All of a sudden you can start to parse out very easily what bull was doing a bit of damage, and that kind of feeds back into your parentage again. Just moving along the animal's lifetime, a weaning weight, a yearling weight. Essentially, what I would say is anytime you're putting your hand on an animal, and the easier you can record it for yourself without increasing labour cost, it should be done. So a weaning weight, you probably see them at yearling, when they're a yearling again. If you see them in between for a vaccination or whatever, put them up on the scales and record that weaning weight. Their carcass information, this will be in the next slide as well on carcass information. These are just kind of what I would focus on. When you record the exact calving dates of animals, there's actually a lot of information you can take from that that will feed into your cow. Obviously you'll see the age of the first calving of that when she was having her first calf, a good metric for puberty. You'll see her calving interval, animals that are females that have a longer calving interval or is indicative of skipping a heat or didn't go on calve when she was served in one of her heats. So that's kind of that's a good metric of fertility. If you're talking about AI, do calving to first service, because you know exactly when she was served for the first time. And these are all metrics of female fertility. Again, if you have AI data, that can be mined a lot better. You can still have calving intervals. You can see how many serves per cow were needed. You can have calving to first service all elucidated from that data also. If you're culling for females, whether it's for feet and legs, other calving problems, calving difficulties, all those culling decisions should be recorded as well. Even if you make out just a list of your general culling reasons, number them 1 to 10 or 1 to 15 or whatever, and just in your culling column, why was she culled? 2, feet and legs. 5, calving difficulty. 10, mastitis. Just kind of set up an easy data recording format like that, and it'll make it very easy. And then subjective scores like docility. Actually, a farmer's opinion of an animal's docility is actually proven to be highly heritable. A farmer knows his animals. That's when we're talking data management and genetic evaluation, we always realize that farmers know their animals. They're out there every day with them and they've got years of experience. So if you ask a farmer to score docility on an animal, it's probably pretty bang on. Also linear scores there, this is kind of to do with the functional side of things, and probably more due to relevant to the seed stock side of things, or maybe the cow calf when he's choosing his replacement heifers. Linear scores I'm talking there about hip height, body length, hoof score, leg scores, height at withers, width at withers, and stuff like that. Say hip width is kind of feeds into calving ease. You want to keep those hips wide, but you don't want her to be the biggest cow in the world either. So height at withers, and you don't want a big long lengthy cow either, because they'll take a lot of maintenance. So they're kind of all measurements you can take that will feed into your selection decisions also. So how do you record all this? the more savvy or the more computer savvy people can probably set up a decent data recording system by themselves with like something like Microsoft Excel. That can get a bit messy after a while, as you end up having multiple files for multiple years, etc. So I would actually investigate, see what softwares are out there. And they are, when you buy these softwares, they now have apps for your iPad or apps for your phone that you can record data as you're out on foot, and other little add-ons like sensors and stuff like that. And they marry up well to like scales that you can buy, true test scales and stuff like that. And like if you're working with you know, a company that actually makes scales, they probably have software to do it also. So investigate softwares. You know, I would say get scales. You know, both for those softwares and for the scales, and for any of those initial investments, there are huge percentage grants available there, and you should, you know, tap into Alberta Ag or SaskAg or even Agri-Food Canada, Western Economic Development. Places like that actually have huge grants that will pay for more than 50% of these softwares and scales. Will there be a labour increase with recording data? Yes, of course there will. We probably all realise that, but I'd bet my house on it that it'll be worth it. You know, you can get traits defined from your AI information if you're an AI user, and tracking your animals is very important. So this new, well, it's not, BICS has been around for a while, but it's been given a new lease of life lately, BICS 2.0, where information is going to flow back from the packing plants, and I'd encourage you all to go onto bics.cattle.ca and have a look what they're doing and see how you can sign up. I think there's a trial version available at the moment if you want to sign up, and you can contact them and see how you're able to get your carcass data back and see what your animals have done. So I think that was about, where am I, 35, just approaching 40 minutes there. I think I'll wrap it up like that. Just a few acknowledgements there to Alberta Innovates, Tech Futures and Biosolutions, Genome Canada, and Alberta Livestock and Meat Agency. I'll wrap it up there, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks for everyone's attention.
Thank you, Dr. Crowley. We're ready to take questions now. If you have any, you may type them in the question box in the bottom right-hand side of the control panel. You can type the questions in the question panel or in the chat box, whichever is more accessible to you. Okay, John, I have a question here. It says, which traits are the most heritable? Birth weight, weaning weight?
Actually, carcass traits are pretty heritable. Carcass weight and yield grade are about 50% heritable, 45% heritable. You know, when we talk about heritability, it means the percentage of the overall variation that can be controlled by genetics. So carcass traits are probably the most heritable. Weaning weight is about 35% heritable. feed efficiency is actually pretty heritable, about 40-45% heritable. So they'd be kind of the more higher heritable traits. Usually fertility is pretty lowly heritable, so fertility has a lot of influence of management on it.
Okay. So someone said environment, in terms of environment and EPDs, he said you should clarify how environment factors into EPDs.
Okay, so how environment factors into EPDs? That's the beauty about EPDs. It doesn't. EPDs are measures of genetic merit outside of environment. So when you're giving a genetic merit score on an animal, all the environmental impacts in that animal have been taken out. Environment such as diet, and whether it's from a first calver or a mature cow, or where it was raised, or what breed it is. Well, usually genetic EPDs are within breeds, so that doesn't matter. But usually the environmental impacts are taken out of EPDs. It doesn't reflect how much an animal has been fed, or whether it was grazing or feedlot fed.
Yeah, I have a question. He says, are there any research being done on this topic? I guess referring to recording. Well, I can speak to that. We have a current ADOPT project. ADOPT is Agricultural Demonstration of Practices and Technology, which has been funded by the Ministry of Agriculture. And in partnership with Western Beef, we're using their data at Lanigan to show producers the importance of recording, especially recording the phenotypes and the pedigree. So be on the watch out for the results on this ADOPT project. In addition, we have more webinars that will be coming up, as John had mentioned. Some will be talking about the tools that you require, and eventually down the line we'll be talking about the effect and the impact genomics has on the recording and results. So John, is there something that's going on there at the U of A that you want to talk about?
Regarding
recording and
recording, no research into the recording, I guess. There's a bit of research actually going into recording of feed efficiency on a cheaper scale, because it can be a little expensive to record feed intake on animals. So we've actually just we're writing a project proposal at the moment that will enable us to collect feed efficiency information a lot easier and a lot cheaper. So yeah, that's probably one that's pursuing at the moment.
Okay. Well, I don't see any other question on the board. Okay, another one came in. It says bulls and scrotums and female udders. Any information on the size and placement of nipples on bulls and relationship to heritability of udders on females?
Say the last part again. Any information on?
Any information on size and placement of nipples on bulls. It should be on probably on the females, on havers, and relationship to heritability of udders on females.
I'm not sure I understand that question fully. Let me try and any information on what they should look like, or any
probably relationship, heritability of those reproductive traits, I guess.
Yeah, I think, let me think, scrotal circumference is about 10 or 15% heritable, I think. Others, I'm not sure the heritability of it. It's not a hugely routinely recorded trait, but it should be. and also teeth placement as well, and teeth length. I've anecdotally have heard that because there's been no cognizance taken of teeth placement or teeth length, that some teeth are actually getting big and thick, and that some calves are finding it hard to suckle. That's anecdotal. It might be a once-off story, but you know, there are things that when you they're the things like when you focus on recording weaning weights and birth weights, little things like scrotal size and other quality tend to decline a little bit because they're not being focused on. So it's pretty important as well, and I didn't mention it throughout. It's pretty important to record kind of a balanced suite of traits.
Yeah, his question was, do the size and placement of teeth on bulls influence the type of other female progeny we have?
I have no idea. I don't think there's much notice taken of teats and bulls.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't see any other question. At this time, we would like to thank you for joining us for this webinar, identifying the golden traits and tracking livestock production records in our enhanced decision-making webinar series. And special thanks to Dr. Crowley for putting this presentation together. We want to thank Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture and the Western Beef Development Center for their support as well. If you have any questions regarding this topic or anything else related to agriculture, please contact your nearest Saskatchewan Agriculture Regional Office or call the Agriculture Knowledge Center at 1-866-457-2377, or you can visit our website. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.
Thanks, Bobby.